I think if there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that Nickelback sucks.
Yes, I guess we can. It seems to be the widely held narrative.
So the question is, exactly why does Nickelback suck? Now, I don't mean, why are they a bad band? Because they're not. How did the narrative become they are the most hated band in the world? So to talk about that, I decided to pull in somebody who might be considered a bit knowledgeable on the history and wherewithals of Nickelback. Mike Kroeger. We'll eventually be saying hello.
Hello. I wasn't sure if that was where I was supposed to say hello, Bruce.
That's quite right.
But I do know a thing or two about Nickelback, and and I do know a thing or two about the phenomenon of Nickelback sucking.
Let's start with that. Exactly when did Nickelback begin to suck?
Not remarkably, the time at which Nickelback began to suck started shortly after we started to sell millions and millions of albums. Until that point, we were sort of the beloved darlings who clearly had no chance, hopeless, hapless, never going to make it, and everybody loves an underdog until they're no longer the underdog. And then once you're not the underdog anymore, that's when you start to suck.
Can you nail it down to one of your album releases? Is there a particular artistic moment in time where you went from being the indie darling to, let's face it, sucking?
That is the time when we released at that time, our album that had, done the best for us. So it was an album called Silver Side Up, which was, sadly enough, released on September 11th, 2001, which was a day that did suck. Most definitely changed the world, and not for the better. But that was also the day that our lives changed, because our biggest record to that point came out that day, and we had a very, very successful single. How You Remind Me was being played in the United States at the time that the album came out. They say that there was, at any given second in those days, that song was in play on radio somewhere in the United States. There was literally a continuous loop. There was never a moment in that year when it wasn't playing.
Look, I wasn't even listening to radio at the time, and that earworm burrowed its way into my skull.
Yeah.
And like I said, I wasn't even listening to music. So you went from having kind of, as you said, indie darling, you were moving along, you were being successful, but then that day happened and it blew up. Was it an immediate blow up? Was it a slow burn? Or just one day you're a working musician, the next day you are top tier superstar, however you want to phrase it?
We woke up, well, first of all, prior to the release of the album on September 11th, 2001, we had been out on tour. The album had been finished for some time. We had been working singles to radio, and the single How You Remind Me had kind of peaked a few weeks prior, maybe 6 weeks prior to the release of the album. And that was when it started to get weird. It got really, really big, and it just reacted in a global way, very, very strangely. We were getting played and listened to in countries we'd never been to before. People, we didn't even know were listening to us. They were, our song was everywhere. Crazy places like Bangkok and other places where we've never even thought about going. We're, consistently and continuously playing our music. And it just turned right there. And the thing about being sort of a critic's darling or whatever, that only lasts until you start to achieve a level of success. And then you're no longer the underdog that everybody's pulling for. Then you become sort of like a monolith. You become dehumanized, and you're no longer a band of four guys from Canada. You're more, now you're the big machine that feels no pain and everybody can take shots at, because what do they care? They're just a big rock band. No, nobody in a big rock band has feelings.
What was the first shot like? What was the first indication? Because I'm sure there was like early over the bow shots that hinted at what was to come, but probably wasn't recognizable at the time. Like, oh, there's something like a global meme is going to happen on our backs.
Right. When we started to notice a trend, it was when our own country came after us. When Canada started to viciously attack us, that's when we knew there was something more than just maybe a writer trying to put some sizzle down for their editor, and hopefully sell a couple of magazines or whatever. It turned, from those sort of, shots about maybe somebody's haircut or some, bullshit like that. And then Canada the Canadian media kind of came after us, and they had been friendly with us to that point. And that was, I think, when we recognized that the sentiment was somehow changing to the tall poppy syndrome, which, I don't know if you're aware of the tall poppy syndrome, but it's very much I believe, an English phenomenon, which Canada derives a lot of their culture from the English culture. And it's that the when the tall poppy grows taller than all the others, it must be cut down, back down to size to be just like everybody else, because it's grown beyond its means, or beyond its right. It's sticking out too much. And in that culture, the ultimate sort of the ultimate position to be in is one of conformity and being like everybody else. Even if you're successful and doing well and living your dream, that's kind of an offense.
Did you get it in in actual interviews where beforehand it was warmer and fuzzier, and then suddenly it became more of a combative, hostile sort of tit for tat?
Let me tell you, I've seen that. I've seen it where the person was nice and friendly until the camera or recording device started rolling, and then they just started coming after me, which
this
was a surprise. Yeah, just like this person. And there was other cases, and this didn't happen to me. This hasn't happened to me so much as it's happened to my brother. But for him, it's been particularly amazing in that, he would meet the journalist, do the interview with the journalist, go great, have a great interview, really, relating on a human level, and, maybe almost getting to the point where you think you made a new friend. And then you see the finished product and it's just a complete hit job, just absolute hatchet job. Chad told me a story once about how he recently, just recently in the last little while, a guy walked up to him. So he was out somewhere, and some guy walked up to him and said, "Hey man, nice to meet you. You're Chad from Nickelback, right?" And he said, "Yeah." And the guy goes, "Yeah, I used to write for Rolling Stone magazine." And Chad's like, Rolling Stone has been outspokenly negative toward us, very vicious toward us. So,
let's call it warlike hostile.
Yeah, okay, hostile, sure. Anyway, this journalist said, "Hey, I got to tell you a story." He said to Chad, "I got to tell you this story. You might get a kick out of it or whatever." And Chad says, "Sure, it's all fine. Tell me what your story is." And the guy said, "Yeah, I wrote I was asked to review one of your albums." He said, "I can't remember which album it is now." He was asked to review one of our albums, and he wrote a very, very detailed and well thought out review of the album, and it was positive. The guy said that the record was good. That
we can't have that.
He took it to his editor, and his editor just said, I'm not going to print this. And the guy was like, why? And he said, because we here at Rolling Stone are very anti Nickelback. We do not like Nickelback. We can't write good things about Nickelback. So go back and retool it, find the negative. That's what sells for these guys. You write negative things about Nickelback, not positive things. And for that journalist guy, it was a big lesson for him that day that, ultimately he didn't understand, or he was coming from an altruistic place of being an objective journalist who, just listened to an advanced copy of a record that wasn't even out yet. And he liked it and he thought it was good. And here's all the reasons why he thought it was good. But no one wants to read that. We don't want to hear the story about, the happy ending. What we want to hear about is how somebody's big, rich, famous, and we're going to take their pound of flesh publicly. That's more like what people like.
It must be terrible for Chad, whom, I have never met or spoken to him, but I can imagine people just feel free to shit on him at the drop of a hat. I imagine people possibly, that was like a positive, even though it was not a happy story to hear, it was a positive interaction. But I can imagine people feeling free to just be negative to his face. And actually negative to your face, simply because it's so accepted. People tend to assume that it's just common knowledge that the music, like, this is terrible, and the people who make it clearly are morons and terrible people. So fuck them. Hey, fuck you.
So it's never happened to me.
But he's
I think for two reasons it hasn't happened to me. Number one, being a bass player who doesn't sing in a rock band is probably it's the closest thing to the witness protection program you can imagine. So I'm pretty much totally anonymous, which is awesome for me.
You are in the band, right?
Well, allegedly, Bruce, allegedly. But the other thing is that generally people are cowards. Generally speaking, people won't come up to me and tell me, that they don't like my band, mostly because they probably get the sense that I might physically dismantle them, which is not inaccurate. But
what's your belt in jiu-jitsu?
I don't want to talk about anything like that. But I'm not. A spirited debate would ensue for sure, and that's something most people don't want. But it has happened to my brother. Usually in situations where the alcohol is flowing, the liquid courage goes a long way, and he's had to hand out a couple knuckle sandwiches over the years to people who had, outspoken opinions, who were begging for a knuckle sandwich. But that's just the way it goes sometimes. But for the most part, people are generally speaking fairly compliant, fairly easy. And when you tell them what band you're in, I can always tell if it's somebody who likes my band, is indifferent to my band, or hates my band by their reaction. It's just like, you're in that band. It's like, okay, I can see, that you might have a side hustle as a keyboard warrior, and that's cool. But yeah, you got any thoughts? No, never.
Interesting, because I remember when I had my moment, it was sort of like, hey, I have to ask, how did this happen? Like, literally the question I'm asking you on my podcast was one of I think it was our second or third interaction. I just was curious because
yeah,
just for the public record, I fell into the indifferent. I heard some of the songs were cool. I was good. I wasn't that into music at the time. I had other things on my mind. So I sort of just missed the entire phase. And meeting you, and the thing about you is you're just my relationship to Mike, for the listener, is Mike's my guy to ask stupid questions to. I don't know why he agrees to this, but you always need to have somebody in your life that before you go into a business meeting or before you do something, you can ask the stupid questions to, so that when you go and do it, you're not asking the stupid questions in the moment, so that people who might invest in you or work with you don't think you're a moron. So I'll ask Mike, and I'll be a moron in Mike's presence and he will set me straight, and then I will appear like I know what the hell I'm doing.
That's normal friend stuff, Bruce. That's what we do.
It's true, but I just want to kind of make it known. Partially because if you don't have somebody in your life like this, go find it. You need it. Otherwise, you're just going to make mistakes left and right. And while I'm a big proponent of mistakes, the less you make still, the better.
Yeah, no question. That's true.
So yeah, that was how I met, just curiosity of how this happened. And I am curious beyond, so the big album hit, How You Remind Me came out and it blew up in the way that very few songs do. Those are the rare hits that just take you to the top. And that'll be fun for the mic. And the hate came. How did it affect you, not just you personally, because you're a pretty strong-willed guy, but how did it affect your family? And I don't just mean Chad, but your wives, and more importantly, your parents, and eventually your kids.
And eventually my kids. Yeah. Going all the way back to when it first began and became sort of not just, a writer taking cheap pot shots, but it became kind of a trend and kind of,
cultural phenomena.
Yeah. It started to become sort of like almost a constant, and it hurt, it really did hurt because, when you begin this sort of journey, there's sort of this understanding that you're probably not going to make it, and because you're just not, like, people don't make it, in music. Like it's very, very uphill.
The odds are so stacked against everybody. And that was even before the music
correct.
fell out of the music industry with Napster and
exactly.
So forth.
You're at best fighting from the bottom. You're probably, most likely embarking on the journey of a very expensive hobby that you're going to be paying off as a mortgage when it doesn't work out. But everybody's going to want to get their money back, So when you're doing that, everybody's behind you and they're pulling for you and cheering for you when you're at your most hopeless. You're effectively homeless. You're poor. You're living consistently on the kindness of others. Like we had more home cooked meals out there, from just kind people than I could even explain to you, So you're very much almost like a charity case in the beginning, and people.
It took a while I think it took much longer for the turning point than people would realize for your band. You were effectively poor for much longer. Much longer.
Probably the first 6-7 years of Nickelback, we were completely living out of the back of a van, literally. And there is a certain sort of like appeal for people to get behind that and cheer for that and spur that on. And there's a real camaraderie amongst the fans, and, because it's their secret, right? It's the thing that nobody else knows about.
It's a cause.
Yeah, cause celeb. They're behind this thing. And it's only when everybody else figures it out that the bitterness begins, because it goes from, hey, this is, everybody should listen to this. This is this underground thing. They're doing really great, but nobody knows about it yet, to, you
sold out.
Well, and there's that middle phase where it's like, yeah, everybody get in, everybody check it out. This is awesome. And then there's the part where, well, I knew them before everybody else did. I knew them when they were cool, and then you're not cool.
Oh my
anymore.
God, they went so commercial, and I can barely listen to them anymore. I mean, oh God, that song Photograph. Like, I don't even think they like photographs, but they made a song about it. It's like so terrible. Sorry.
No,
you were saying something.
But you're not wrong. Like that is the type of sort of, that's kind of the mechanics of the thoughts or feelings of this thing. It's just everybody personalizes this so much, and it becomes like a possession thing that they kind of own us, and they get really bitter when other people find out about it. Like, I've heard stories of bands who, they were like really undergroundy bands. I'm not going to say the name of there's one in particular. I'm not going to say the name of the band, but the
We don't want to promote anybody but you right now.
well, it isn't a promotion, unfortunately, but the lead singer person, like the creative driving force of the band, was like, oh, this is great. I get to, experience this thing and express myself as an artist. And then all of a sudden they start looking out into the audience and they start to see people in the audience that they don't think they like. Mm-hmm. They see people out there in the audience and they're like, oh, that's those jock fucks that used to, shove me in a dumpster or like be mean. I don't want jocks to like my band. And then they start hating their own music because they become widely popular. And it's not just the nerds and the outcasts that like them anymore. It turns out lots of people like them. And there's this kind of this odd sort of disconnect between like who should like a band. Like I think it's idiotic.
And it's also because music tends to be a very personal thing, because ultimately what music is effectively, and this is going to sound very pretentious, so I'm going to stick my pinky out while I say it, painting with emotions. And by doing this, if a song can evoke a feeling in you, when you have a feeling, you connect to the source of that emotion. So people connect to bands in a very personal way, even though in reality, complete strangers. But they start building images of who these people should be. And I guess that then ties into the selling out. Right. Or the feeling that you've sold out. And effectively by selling out, what you've really done is you've betrayed our emotions, Mike.
Right. What's not, it's just, our relationship is no longer precious with just us. Everybody else knows now. And they're in it too. You did mention earlier the sort of effect on
your family,
our families and stuff. And yeah, like,
God, how did your mom take it? Because
I was going to go down the road of like, the Seinfeld road of, Jerry's mom, like, well, who wouldn't like him? Why wouldn't you like him? He's great. Everybody likes him. Right. Your mom doesn't ever want to think that there might be something that, somebody could, some kind of thing about your personality or your being that they could weaponize against you and hurt you with, because to everyone, everyone's in everyone's mother's eyes, they are still a little baby boy or girl, and you're perfect to your mother. So no one's mom can imagine anybody not liking you. So we did go through that.
Was she just defensive, or did it actually wound her?
Oh no, it hurts. It hurts all the way around. Definitely, it hurt, and there is some indignation and some upset coming from that. Of course, the worst was how, our children were bullied. My children were bullied. The other people in my band who have kids, their children were bullied at school for just being the children of a guy from Nickelback, and, horribly teased, and it leaves, permanent damage, in all of them. Although I know full well that, kids are absolutely brutal, and you don't have to be the son or daughter of the guy from a band that people want to take shots at to get bullied.
It's a convenient hook.
Sometimes you just wear the wrong socks, whatever, you're getting it. They're coming after you. It's almost like the tall poppy thing. Like, don't try to be an individual, just blend in, be like everybody else. Don't stick out. Don't, be distinct, and, just stay under the radar and no one will notice you. And that's where you should be. And sadly for our kids, they were above the radar because of who their fathers were. That's something I feel a lot of regret for my kids having to deal with that.
Which of course was not in your control, and you shouldn't, but of course as a father you would. Here's my question specifically about your kids. Because, children are going to be pricks to children. That's just part of growing up. And you find a hook and that happens to you as a child. It's the thing that makes you stand out, as you said. However, while adults wouldn't feel comfortable approaching you as an adult, did you find that some adults were a little more freer to say disparaging things about you and to your kids because they are the children of celebrities. So
I don't know about that, Bruce. That's one you got me. I'm kind of stumped on that one. I never really experienced any adults coming at my kids that way, and no, I never. Not that I'm aware of. And if they were here right now, I could ask them, and they might have something. But I don't know. The other sad part about all this is both of my kids, because they didn't want to upset me or make me feel bad, they didn't tell me that they were being bullied. I only learned about it well after the fact, many years after the fact, after the damage was done, and ultimately, what could I even do about it anyway? I was already protecting them the best I could, and sooner or later they got to go to school, and I can't sit in every class with them and defend them from the slings and arrows of their colleagues.
We all enter the world at some point. Would you say that they've dealt with it okay as they've gotten older? Have they
Yes,
come to terms?
I think they've come to terms with it. There is lasting damage with my kids, both of them. Stuff that they will carry for the rest of their lives, unfortunately. But I think they've learned a lot from it. And the other thing is their generation is sort of my children's generation is like the first generation that experienced cyberbullying.
Yes,
that they kind of that's their dubious honor of being the first group of kids to bully each other by electronic means,
and can be bullied by people they've never met.
Never met. You don't know who they are. You don't know how old they are, where they are, what their cultural background is. You don't know anything about them. So that whole thing about when you're meeting conflict, you got to first consider the source. Well, that's out the window. You don't have that.
Yeah. Well, we've experienced how this has affected your family, which clearly was a wonderful experience for them. How did it affect your career? So, boom, you went from being the indie darling to biggest band in the world for a little bit to most hated band in the world. How did that actually affect the day-to-day runnings of the band and the moves going forward? Did you find your sales dive off? Did it actually help them? What did it do to you?
So there's a number of ways that you can react or preemptively set up things to deal with this. So, the trouble that I have with it, and it's something that I've mentioned a lot of times with my guys in the band, is that, in being cognizant of these viewpoints or of these people that are looking for other things to attack, there's almost nothing you can do about it, and you become in danger of starting somewhat of a battered wife syndrome sort of behavior, where it's like, oh, well, if I say that, then they're going to come at me like this. And if we do this, we're going to get attacked for, doing this thing, and so on, until the point where you're essentially paralyzed by fear and you do nothing, because if you do nothing, no one can criticize you. And, that was something that, we really, I think, had to really think about and get real with that. Becoming so concerned what people are going to say about everything it's a paralyzing experience, and you can't allow yourself to be paralyzed with fear of critics or criticism. You got to go on, and that, truthfully, the only reason why we made it, well, I should say one of the biggest reasons why we made it through, was that we didn't quit. We just kept doing what we do. And, regardless of the naysayers and haters, because there's always going to be naysayers and haters when you're doing something big. If you don't cause a guttural reaction to people, positive or negative, I feel like you're not really getting all of it. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have lovers and haters, people just don't care. And that's
love
okay.
me, hate me, but just don't be indifferent to me.
Right. Indifference, and that's the thing that scares me the most is if people finally stop hating us We could be relegated
People
to
stop
like
hating us.
they
If
won't
we
even
stop
know.
sucking.
We'll just disappear because then it's people like there was one point where I remember there was a particular thread on, I forget what social media portal it was, but
Probably Reddit, because Reddit's a place where a lot of this shit starts.
Reddit's awesome. Yeah. But I remember one person was railing on how, awful Nickelback is, et cetera. And another person, came sort of to our defense and said, hey, this is, these are well-crafted songs that, resonate with people and people react to them and they
might be
love
some
them.
artistry there. Who knows?
This person was kind of trying to make a more nuanced argument of, oh, they suck, the person saying, oh, they suck, and the other person's, well, actually, here's some facts, there's all these things, and also, they seem to be pretty nice guys, and I remember the person's response was so perfectly telling. The person said, yeah, the songs have all the hooks and catches, and I bet you they're great guys, but they still suck. And I was just like, you know what? This is an established narrative that, that person doesn't want to diverge from, and that's okay. But that person was more afraid to say, well, maybe they're not so bad, because then all the rest of their co-haters would come at him. You know what I mean? He doesn't want to become sort of an apologist for the thing that everybody agrees sucks.
I think there are a lot of people out there who are very vehemently Nickelback sucks without actually really listening to Nickelback, without being that familiar with the songs. It's just a popular thing to do. You are in a club. It is a fun club. You guys fucking suck. Awesome. But they don't know the fucking songs. They don't listen to the music. They have no idea.
Bruce,
it's just popular to do it.
I think, I would never argue with you outwardly, but I am going to counter a little bit obliquely, let's say. I don't believe that the people who are saying this haven't listened to the music. I believe they have listened to the music, and I think they have the records, and I think they come to the shows. I think someone's lying. But, here's the thing. There was one case of, a person who I was reading about. They were saying, oh, Nickelback, they're terrible. Mm-hmm. That's all that radio shit.
Yep,
radio shit. And I'm sitting there going, so if it's all radio shit and you don't like radio shit, but you're listening to Nickelback
on the radio,
unwillingly on the radio, where exactly is your indignation coming from about radio shit when you're listening to the radio?
I have to listen to something while I drive. It's not a choice.
And right. And the fact of the matter is, sadly, the reason why all these radio stations played this was not some Byzantine plot to melt everybody's minds. What was going on was, back then, that was the old days, they used to do constant testing of playlists. So they would actually do auditorium testing where people would come into a big room, they would play a song, and then they would give people a piece of paper to write down or record their thoughts and how they felt about things. And sadly for the hater sphere, we tested so strongly that the radio stations just had to keep playing it because everybody who heard the songs liked them. And that just turns out that's what they're trying to do, is please their listeners. Ultimately, what they're trying to do is sell ads. But in doing so, by having their listeners, their listeners listen, they listen to the ads, and then everybody's happy. But the fact is it was just working. It wasn't like it was getting jammed down everybody's throat. People liked it.
So I think what you're saying, if I were to distill it down, is that you sold a lot of toothpaste.
A lot of toothpaste, a lot of whatever they sell on the radio,
Hamburgers and sex, usually at the same time.
You go. Sure.
But did we actually get to the answer to the question I asked? I'm not sure that we did, which is how did How did no?
How did it
sorry,
affect
go.
me? Is that
so
the-
no? We kind of covered how it affected
Okay.
you, which is you'd punch somebody in the face.
Oh, okay.
We've covered how it affected your kids, which is it made you want to punch somebody in the face.
Right.
I'm just summing that up.
Yes.
And then how it affected your mother, and she wanted to punch somebody in the
Yeah.
face.
A lot of face punching. Yes.
Yes, a lot of face punching because it's just the way of the world.
Sure is.
But and you've established that people who you feel that people who hate you also are secret fans, even though they don't realize it. But as far as album sales, as far as popularity, did the Nickelback Sucks become a backdoor to Nickelback being more successful than successful?
You know, it's still in that thing that we mentioned earlier or later, depending on how you edit this, about
Or concurrently, we can go. Time is flexible here.
we can stretch and
When you're
dilate
watching
time.
this, we're not even having this conversation. That happened weeks ago.
This is amazing. I need Keanu Reeves to jump in here. Whoa, because we're fully in the Matrix right now. But what?
I went Bill and Ted, but sure.
Yeah, that was. It is. Yeah, that's a whole other podcast. Anyway, I was about to go for it, but
He's a neighbor. He'll be back. Don't
yeah,
worry.
yeah, he'll be back.
We'll talk about other stupid shit.
The apathy could have been fatal to us. You know, if people weren't so outspoken in their love and outspoken in their hate of us, the apathy, we could have been like our career could have been over 15 years ago if there were apathy. So secretly, not so secretly now, and not so secretly amongst my band, I've been really clear with my guys that, you know, all that hate has given our career legs that it wouldn't have had if everybody would have just one day went, irrelevant, who cares? We would have been done for.
It's a mediocre.
Yep. Mediocre, moderate, you know, anything sort of measured in response would probably be the death knell of our careers. So
When I think
I'm
Nickelback,
happy.
I think of a mayonnaise white bread sandwich with no salt.
Fortunately for you, you know, we haven't had that trouble of getting beiged out.
Remember, love you or hate you, just don't go beige.
Don't go beige.
Do not go beige.
Don't go beige.
Any other thoughts on the fact that you suck?
You know, the thing about the Nickelback sucking that's most interesting is that no matter what, I have never once read, heard, been told that Nickelback sucks live, because we don't. We kick ass live. And that's how we've always, that's the importance we've placed on how we do our businesses, is that we're a band that can deliver the goods live. We can play. A lot of bands can't play. A lot of artists can't sing. We can play and sing, and we do our stuff. So, you know,
You guys don't do the grid shit.
What's that?
You guys don't grid.
No. It's what it is. Up there, there's, you know, there's a human element to what we do live, and we're a good live band. So, you know, ultimately, for all the hate that's come at us, we've never had anybody come at us negatively for our show, because it's good.
I think that is a wonderful note to leave the whole Nickelback Sucks on. I really appreciate you coming here to talk about it, because again, like, my relationship to you is one of a friend, and I find the whole thing ridiculous and silly. And now that I'm doing this kind of thing, I wanted to put that out there publicly, that I find the whole thing ridiculous and silly. And I think just as you're the only member of the band that I know, but as a person, you're just this great guy. And
Thank you, Bruce. You're a great guy too.
I know, you slut. And I feel totally undeserving of this kind of negative bullshit being thrown at you.
Well.
And speaking of negative bullshit, I want to take this moment to say, by the way, if you're out there and somebody from Nickelback contacts you, kind of asking you for money or anything like that, it is not them. They do not contact their fans in that way. And they're not offering you any sale of crypto. There is no nickel coin. Well, aside from the actual coin that is
We're working
nickel.
on that. We're working on that, but we haven't done it yet. But you're absolutely right,
Yeah.
Bruce.
So
we don't need your money. We don't want your money. Unless we're selling you a concert ticket or music, don't want your money. Don't want it.
So if you're contacted by Secret Chad 343,
God,
that is not them.
it's so true. That is, you're so right on. And
I just wanted to bring that up because
you.
I think enough people are being ripped off in weird ways and they shouldn't be.
It's really pathetic. It's pathetic that people are doing it, and it's really, really sad that people are falling for it. It's tremendously upsetting to me. I hate the idea of our fans being taken advantage of by, well, anyone.
Yeah. And on that note, since the whole idea of this was fails, falls, and fuck, this is a little bit of a departure, even though this is probably going to be one of the first few episodes. Give a little piece of advice to, as I mentioned, that you're the guy I throw things off of, just young musician, young artist, it doesn't matter what the art is. What's something they shouldn't do? What's a thing to avoid?
Should not do?
Should not do. And then throw in something they should do. But
well, I think it's the same. It's the same answer, only presented in slightly from slightly a different angle. Number one, if anybody ever comes at you and says, "If you really want to make it, here's what you got to do," that person is usually trying to tell you how you can be like them. Ignore it. So don't listen to other people when they tell you what you should do, be, say, think. And the counterpoint is do what you want and fuck everybody else. Because ultimately, all anybody else wants is for you to be like them because they know the way. You got to avoid that at all costs. You got to not listen to them, because the fact of the matter is the world is full of artists and musicians, actors who never did it because they listened to people who told them they couldn't do it. Don't let that happen to you.
be yourself.
Be yourself.
And
do
fuck
your
everybody
thing.
else.
Fuck them. Fuck them. Everybody's going to have an idea of what you should or shouldn't do or be or say or think. Fuck them. Don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to anybody. Be true to yourself, and you will succeed and fail on your thoughts and ideas.
And if you want to find Mike and Nickelback, where do we find Mike and Nickelback?
Do you mean in the social media way, or
Yeah, I mean,
like
so
the showing up at my
I
house?
actually want to give your home address.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say some people showed up at my house this morning. Actually, first thing, still played out from the Super Bowl. A gaggle of girls that weren't wearing enough clothes. They looked cold. Got dropped off in front of my house for some reason this morning at 7 a.m.
That is like
And they were
specifically
not-
for you, or just accidentally?
No, they weren't wearing breakfast attire either. Just funny. But anyway, yeah, I'm not going to invite anybody to my home because I frankly don't want anybody to come to my home. Anyone. But I think that Nickelback is on all platforms of social media. So come and hate at your leisure. That's great. And
Look for the blue check mark.
Yeah, only the blue check marks count. The thing is that only Daniel and I exist on social media. If you see my brother, Chad, or Ryan, it's fake. They're just not there at all. And I'm Michael _Kroeger 555 on Instagram. If anybody wants to come and say hello to me on Instagram, and keep it clean. No blows below the belt, please.
There it is. Love him or hate him. And if you do hate him, you certainly don't know him. That was Mike Kroeger of Nickelback. Was there a question that I just completely failed you by not asking him? If so, leave it down in the comments. And while you're at it, follow me on all the socials. And tune in next week, where I talk to prolific podcast host Lindsey Graham.
So, but I went home to my wife and told her that, well, guess what? I was fired today, but she is, fully employed and we had savings. So it wasn't horrible.